Thank you very much, Mrs. Kudmani. We do have also another speaker, the country that we're talking about very much lately, Russia, Mr. Veniamin Popov. He's a director of the Center for Partnership of Civilizations at the Moscow State Institute of International Relations. He's a retired diplomat and also served as a Russian ambassador to OIC and other Muslim organizations. Mr. Popov.
Thanks. First, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues. Thanks. First, I'd like to make two general observations to begin with, in order to explain our attitude towards this Syrian crisis. Let's say that the events of the last decades show that there is no solution by force to such problems as ethnic, national, or religious. It is not possible in the 21st century to solve these problems by force. It is for us, it is evident truth. And we think that many events of the last years of this century confirm this conclusion. For example, the most powerful state in the world, the United States, sought to impose the vision of democratic governance on Iraq and Afghanistan. We know the results, and there were a lot of efforts, huge amounts of money, sacrifices, but they led only to the sacrifices and tragedies. I think we must take a lesson. Israel has tried to use its modern military machine to strike two organizations, not states, organizations, to make them a decisive blow. Hezbollah in 2006 and Hamas in 2008. Israel was unable to cope with it and was forced to retreat. You know, maybe you remember some years ago there was an attempt of Georgia to resolve the South Ossetian issue by military strike. And as well, it's led to the very sad consequences for Georgia itself. We had the fresh example, it's Libya. NATO's bombing to Libya to protect the civil population actually resulted in many casualties among these civilians and led the country to disintegration. Actually, it led to disintegration of two countries, Libya and Mali. I think we are witnessing this situation. From our point of view, the current situation in the Middle East is very transitional and very complicated. And the region of Middle East is beginning to liberate itself from the domination of the West. The complex process of returning to the roots and identity will lead to the increasing influence of local, regional political forces. It certainly is a complicated process, and then there will be some turns and twists and so on. The Syrian knot is extremely complicated, confusing, and many threads ends are not visible or deliberately are hidden. The process of solving of this problem certainly will take some time. Naturally, it's our position. We put high expectations with the practical implementation of the mission of the former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan. It is well known that Syrian government, and I'm not defending the Syrian government or Syrian regime, we are criticizing it, and we know there are a lot of shortcomings in its practice. But we are defending, first of all, international law. The Syrian government has agreed with the proposals of the United Nations and the Arab League envoy. And it is now up to the opposition to decide. There was the last, I think, news that that was even set a date for this process. It's 10th of April, and then the parties have 48 hours to begin the implementation or putting into the practice this ceasefire. I think it is a golden opportunity for the solution of Syrian crisis, for the government and for the opposition. I think that if Turkey and the Western states support the intransigent leaders of the opposition, the negotiations will be doomed to fail. If they support the realistic approach, and they take realistic approach, and push the leaders' opposition to constructive answer, the context can lead to ceasefire and finally towards the normalization of situation. Of course, in this way all sides will face many difficulties. But if the Security Council acts jointly, logically and sensibly on the assumptions of the interest of the peace and stability, the situation can be brought under control and will be able to achieve intra-Syrian dialogue. The implementation of major reforms and ultimately democratic elections under international supervision. I think it is the goal of the opposition as well. In this regard, it would be natural and for me to quote our president, Dmitry Medvedev, who said that the mission of Kofi Annan is actually the last chance to keep the country from the escalation of the civil war. My esteemed colleague from the opposition told us that they have no political experience, these 500 persons. You do. It's quite right. So you should be more reasonable and sound more pragmatically. I'm a pragmatic man. I'm a career diplomat, and I know how difficult, it's easy to unleash the war or to start the conflict, but it is very difficult to find the way to end the war and to solve the problems. Very difficult. There you need a lot of efforts. You need a reasonable approach. You need some kind of compromise. There is no other solution. It is only compromise. It means that you should take into consideration the interests of both parties in conflict, or some parties in conflict. I think it is the evident things, and there is no need to repeat it. But it seems to me, and I want to stress this point once more, the alternative way is tragic way. It will lead to the escalation of the civil war. If the efforts of Kofi Annan will not lead to the way out of this crisis, the actual civil war may flare up in Syria. In this case, the number of casualties and ravages will be enormous. Many experts talk over the possibility of the collapse of the state into several states, several parts. The civil war, of course, will spill over the borders of Syria. It is in the heart of the Arab world, and will have an adverse impact on all neighboring states, without exceptions. This could be a prelude to a serious explosion in the region. There is a lot of combustible material here. This will be a truly devastating tragedy on the regional scale. Ignoring this conclusion is not destructive or counterproductive. It is very dangerous. Meanwhile, we see that some Western countries, Western powers, are clearly trying to implement a doctrine known as divide and rule. Take, for example, Egypt. It is well known that there has been closed a number of the government has closed a number of non-governmental organizations, and their American employees were expelled. Why? It was a scandal in Egypt, because they found in one of these organizations, it is Republican International Institute, if I am not mistaken, the plans for the partition Egypt in 4 countries. In 4 countries, 4 states, separate states. There are already 2 states in Sudan, and they do not get along with each other. In this regard, I would like to remind the American plan known as the idea of the Greater Middle East or New Middle East. For the first time, the term was used by US Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice in June 2006 during a regional tour, citing thereupon the need for reconstruction of the region. After the American press has published the so-called map of Ralph Peters, reflecting the attitudes that are believed to be close to the neoconservative wing of the American experts community, and it provided a radical redrawing of the Greater Middle East map in accordance with the areas of traditional ethnic and religious settlement. It was particularly provided for the establishment of Kurdish state at the expense of Iraq, Turkey, and Iran. And I think we are witnessing some movement in this direction. And as well, it provided for Great Armenia with the annexation of the part of Turkish territory. The redrawing of Saudi Arabia, in which 3 states had to arise, etc. The publication, in spite of its informal nature, caused an acute backlash in the region, especially in Turkey, where some parallels between the plans of the partition of the Ottoman Empire after World War I had been mentioned. Today there is a great deal of talk about the fact that these plans were implementations. We know that in US Congress it is debated the idea of creating a new state of Balochistan, on the territory of 3 countries, Iran, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, and can give you a lot of examples or references on this matter. Obviously, the current rise of political Islam frightens Western countries. It leads leads to deepening of the civilization rupture between the West and the Islamic East. The manifestation of this phenomenon is becoming more frequent. We saw it on the example last days of the so-called Toulouse shooter, as well as many others, that indicates the intensification of Islamophobia. Hence appeared old ideas of some political analysts who argued that the redrawing of the boundaries of the Middle East will help the West to keep its influence, while maintaining a certain level of tension. This certain level of tension will make it possible to keep a lead on the ruling elites of these states. We live in a global world where information technologies create an unprecedented opportunities for closer relations between peoples. And this, we see the objective need, because our planet is facing a huge number of new challenges and threats, solutions to which we can develop only together by means of the collective efforts. Moreover, the rate of current change is so rapid that very often, unfortunately, politicians and policymakers do not have time to understand impending changes. In these circumstances, the role of scientific experts community is growing, and growing dramatically, because it is able to generate meaningful, realistic recommendation. I would like them to meet the meaning of very wise statement of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of USSR, Mr. Gromyko. He had made it on the occasion of the 8-year Iran-Iraqi war. He said that 10 years of negotiations are better than 1 day of war. Thanks.